looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time, what would you think it's worth telling that generation?
Mind spins in spirals like the cogito. I think, therefore, but do I even know? Hume said the sun might not rise in the morning. Patterns ain't proof, just habits we adorn. Russell's teapot floating out in the void. Invisible doubts that can't be destroyed. Belief ain't a bird and the skeptic employs. Question the noise, the cosmos ploys. Skeptic's eyes always peeping the fraud. Truth ain't handed down, it's wrestled from the gods. Doubts my temple, my faith is flawed. Think it through twice before I applaud. Induction wobbles like a table with no leg. Hume's knife cuts leave certainty begging. A billion white swans, blood black renegade. Shatter the mirror, the cracks cascade. Cogito feels strong, but is it really? Thoughts build castles, clouds act silly. Russell's pot spins in the ether so freely. Prove it exists or the claim's too dreamy. Am I the dreamer or the dream in the show? The car wrestled devils, still didn't know. Faith and senses, they play tricks on a low. Truth's a mirage in a desert of woe.
When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another Sunday Skeptic Talk. I am your host, as always, Robert, and I thank you for joining. I was out last week, and we did have a guest scheduled, Miss Kelly from Detroit Atheist Queen. I do want to let everyone know that she has rescheduled with us. Unfortunately, it's fixed to be in August, but it'll be August the 16th. She was happy to move her scheduling rather than us trying to shove everybody forward 1 week. We still try to do these shows generally the first Sunday of the month that we have no guests scheduled. So we do open chat and anybody and everybody can come in and chat. I still enjoy doing this because I get potluck. I never know who's going to pop in and say, hey, and anyone and everyone is welcome. Link is in the description in the side chat. If you're interested in coming in and having a conversation, please do so. But we will have Miss Ember on for Better Than Ember next Sunday. And Miss Kelly will be rescheduled. She'll be August the 16th. We see we already actually have Jeet in here. So we're going to go ahead and bring Jeet in. Jeet, how's it going, man?
Hey.
Was chatting with you a little while ago on your own Discord page over there. You have a pretty decent Discord. You get a few people coming in there chit-chatting about all kinds of things. I understand that you have a channel as well, though. That's the Jeet Una... Jeet, how do you say it? Jeet
so
it's show?
It's Jeet Kune Show, just like Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, but it's show on the end. It's a play on words, basically.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and you mentioned you talk about everything there. What's some of the subjects that you've covered or whatnot?
A lot so far. Geez, man. Gender affirming care to philosophy to economics to just about anything anyone's willing to talk about, I'm willing to engage with, honestly.
Cool. Well, this is Skeptic Talk we do every Sunday, whether it's about religion or just about skepticism in general, whether it's about, and as you've seen with the intro with Bertrand Russell, might tip the hat as to the attitudes towards knowledge that I generally take. And that's that there are processes to come to more accurate knowledge. Obviously, if we come to things through any emotional reasoning, it's likely to be wrong.
Well, radicals. Well, Radical skepticism, right? That's what we jump to.
To a degree, yes, radical skepticism to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see Kurt over there on the side chat. The cheat sheet.
The G. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a good name. The cheat sheet. There you go. But something just came up about Bruce Lee just the other day. I saw his name in the news about something, and I can't remember now what it was to save my life. But have you seen anything with Bruce Lee in the news lately?
Not really, but the funny thing is I do see things on occasion, and he always seems to be somewhat relevant in some sphere of people's discussions, obviously with my platform being based on his philosophy and martial art, there's crossover there, passion there,
I know what it is. July the 3rd, AP Associated Press had an article that says California makes history with Bruce Lee Day. That's the one that I found. So I don't know what they're setting the Bruce Lee Day. Maybe it is July 3rd. I don't know. That's when the article came out, though. California to institute Bruce Lee Day, a first for a Chinese American state's history.
I think that's pretty amazing.
American in-state history. Okay,
that's great.
Yeah, so that's the little article. I knew I'd seen the name Bruce Lee very recently in a headline somewhere, and that's it's not a character that you see in the news a lot anymore, obviously. So, but
no, but he's still out there. Like he's still got his fan base. Yeah.
So. I was always of the opinion that his philosophy-wise, maybe he had some good philosophy stuff. I didn't really know a lot about his philosophy. I did hear him talk on a few radio shows. I heard him talk in an interview, and I'm trying to think who the interview was with. But it was a pretty decent sized personality that did an interview with him. And this is where it came out that he didn't particularly believe in a God in this interview. And I think the interviewer was giving him some pushback. Again, this has been years ago that I've seen this, but do you know what I'm talking about with him mentioning that he didn't believe in a God?
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of like reading into his philosophy and learning a lot about his history and things, and I've come to the conclusion that I believe he was a closet determinist, which would make sense. There is no God; everything is pretty much predetermined or determined, however you want to look at it or phrase it.
Causally determined.
Yeah, but I just don't think he ever overtly said anything about that, or.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You'd know better on that.
He was very Taoist, Buddhist influenced. So, I'm sure there was a struggle there, just like any spiritual upbringing, the kind of deconstruction people go through,
Kurt's crushing it over here on these little little name ideas that he's coming up with here.
Bruce Lee. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't have any particular subject in mind, as generally I just throw this up for people to come in and talk about, but I'll generally write down a few subjects if it's dead that I'll bring them in here. And I wanted to get your opinion on one. I just written a short post the other day on my YouTube page about other possible atoms. And by that, I mean a different possible first human from the scenario that's generally given by theists. So the theists make this proposition regularly that God is the kind of the grounding of all good, and that things are good in as much as they are in God's nature, and they are if they're not in God's nature, but that God's nature is what grounds good. I'm sure you've heard this idea before, this concept.
Yes.
And I see this go round and round that theists or atheists or skeptics will say, yeah, but if God is the origin of all things, God had to have created evil too. It's just necessarily the case. That God had to have created evil if he's the only one that is the causer, that is causing everything. So anyway, what will wind up happening is where this conversation the rubber meets the road is there's this denial of responsibility from the God character. No, it's our fault that sin entered into the world, right? It's humans' fault God made it perfect, but he gave free will. And because he gave free will, that like the bad choice was made. Are you familiar with this? You heard all this? Pretty treaded ground or no?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard lots of this walked through many different ways.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, this is where I was at in it. If you're going to take the Adam and Eve literal side, which I'm surprised how many theists actually do the Adam and Eve literal side of this conversation. The point that I made on a post that I was making a little while back was, if God could have made any other possible first human, he could have made a different person than Adam, right? So let's say God could have made a Joe or a Ron or a Tom or someone with some other characteristics and some other demeanor. And if we say, could God have made this other person? And if the answer to that is no, then God's not all powerful, right? It's a struggle with what we call the triomnies.
yeah,
Right.
logical
So if he couldn't have made a different,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
If he couldn't have made someone different, then he's not all powerful. Let's say he could have made someone different. Let's say he could have made a different first person that had a different predisposition, maybe one that wouldn't have eaten of the fruit, right? Let's say Joe wouldn't have eaten from the fruit. Could he have made Joe? And if he could have made Joe, but he didn't, he made Adam that chose to eat from the fruit, then it's pretty clear that the outcome was chose by God, if that makes sense. You ever heard anything like this as an argument?
It is, but this is well beyond me and where I go. I mean, I'm an evolutionary person. You know, it's like there was no real first human.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it blended into what. Yeah, so when we start jumping in about asking these metaphor about what the first human was and then making assumptions, I'm lost already.
Well, it's from a biblical side, because when you're talking to theists, you're obviously you got to toe this kind. Like we operate inside of the framework. If you're trying to prove internal inconsistency, then you first have to get inside of the framework and operate inside of the framework, and then show how the framework leads to a necessary conclusion, which is that this God had to have created evil. Like it just necessarily had to have created evil even inside of the framework. If God is the only causal agent and everything that began had a cause, like everything, if this is already their argument, everything's leading back to this thing, therefore had to have caused X. So we can say, well, you can do this with the universe. Well, the universe is everything led back to a causal thing. It all led back to God. But if you do this, then you also have to say, well, evil is, where did evil start? It all has to causally lead back to the same creator. But they try to caveat and block and say, no, it's only because God gave free will that evil came about. Surely you're familiar with this to some degree.
Yeah. Again, this is not how I engage with it, you know.
Okay. Well, tell me how you engage with it.
I mean, I'll usually tell people if God is their rationale to begin with, then we're already lost, pretty much. Like I can sit back and listen, but I can't really engage because why? Why to begin with? So yeah, you can get into the logical contradictions, and you can get into those fights. I mean, is there any rationale to begin with necessarily? So, is it just I don't understand the point really. I always say that if we've already accepted God and we're now rationalizing within this frame, to me, it's no different than playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're in fantasy land.
But I've just found, and I've talked to Ed about this, and I guess different people have different experiences on this subject. I always go back to where I was at whenever something reached me that I began to question this thing. And the thing is, I was inside of the framework. I wasn't outside of this framework of religion.
Yeah, fair enough.
I was inside of the framework of the religion. Yeah. So this, to me, my first
the other side
armor was Yeah, that's exactly the thing. But if you're a fundamentalist and you're kind of deep inside of here, the chinks in the armor are going to happen inside of your worldview, that you see an inconsistency, that you see a problem that you can't rectify, you can't fix it. And then you begin to back up. And only then, in my opinion, do you start to see outside of the framework and say, let me look at it from a little different angle. And then you begin to see more and more of, there's problems. There's a lot of problems. But I find that it starts inside of the framework. So that's generally where I try to reach theist. And granted, that doesn't work great unless you know a lot about that theist's particular framework.
Yeah. That would be it for me. Is like I would try and understand it, but it's not something I spend a lot of time on and invest in.
I got you.
I spend time in like evolution, hominids, science, philosophy, these kinds of things. I don't spend a lot of time in scripture and God and logical contradictions and all that stuff. But again, maybe just a different perspective. I go through a lot of communities that are like deconstructing, and it's important to them, but I wasn't indoctrinated with all that stuff. So there was never a deconstruction for me. Nor have I ever had an experience that said maybe God,
I watch Phyllis Sober sometimes, and he does, he messes more so with the Muslim side of this. And I'll admit, it's one that I don't know enough about their internal frameworks. I don't know enough about their, the Quran or the Hadith or other books that influence their framework. I've started to learn a little bit, but getting inside of their frameworks and their ideas, like, I don't know them. I think in large part, they subscribe to a lot of, like the Pentateuch. I think they subscribe to the first 5 books that they consider to be from Moses, and they think that this is something, of some great import. But as far as how they doctrinally interpret a lot of these things, I don't know the answer to that. If I'm going to talk to more Muslims on these subjects, I guess I would get more acquainted with it.
Yeah, I mean, I read the Bible. I didn't study it. I read it. I studied Isaiah at one point in time in my life because my mother said that. We were talking something about the decaying of the family unit or whatever, and I was like, it's not because of Christianity, Mom, or the lack thereof. And she's like, well, you should study Isaiah. So I studied Isaiah, and that was interesting because there was a lot of history wrapped around it. Now, I've also started reading the Quran, and I've talked to a lot of people who are either Muslim and can give me those perspectives, or things like this. So it is interesting to me, but again, it's merely, these are books, and these are things that have been mythicized and mixed with history that is just not fair, because you need to separate the metaphor from the actual history. And when you look at these books, and there's not much actual history that we can account for there. So,
there's little pieces and bits.
Yeah,
and
bits
then
and pieces here and there.
Yeah, bits and pieces. And that's what winds up, when in the apologetic sphere, that's what winds up. They try to use those to give legitimacy to the rest of it. So they have little bits and pieces that might be able to be to some degree validated. And those that now they think that gives legitimacy to every other, component of it. And it's like, every other mythical story that has something that was real involved in it, and not even just a historically mythical, just a modern comic book, for example. I think the Spider-Man one is regularly given as an example. Yes, the fact that Spider-Man is in New York City gives credence to the legitimacy of Spider-Man, right? That would be an absolutely ridiculous argument. He's just being, he's a fictional character being created inside of an atmosphere that is an actual real atmosphere. But we get this from we get this in other stories in history. And what's weird is, as I read back, and now they're going to make an Odyssey. An Odyssey movie's coming out very shortly, I think. And I saw the preview of it, and I told my wife, I keep seeing the Iliad and the Odyssey come up in all kind of literature. I've been reading some early church fathers and stuff, and reading some early Greek literature. And even in Apollonius, I was reading the life of Apollonius, and something come up about one of Homer's writings. And I was like, the more I read, like the more I realized how influential these two books were to Greek history, that they, at the time, it looks like they all thought that this was a real story, right? That many of them that were writing about it much later, they act as if, no, this is totally a real thing.
I guess what I was going to say is it probably has some parallel to some histories that occurred, and this is where the myth comes from. And so there's but what evidence do we have? Almost next to nothing. So, you can create what you want past that. So,
Yeah, and it's something that I've brought up a few times because you'll hear this kind of this textbook argument about finding multiple copies of the Bible. Oh, we found there's like 5,000 copies of this, that, and the other that we found of different fragments, and I point to that there's actually 1,700 portions of the Iliad that has been found. Like it's one of the most found books. Copies that is older than the New Testament, older than the entire New Testament, that we found little fragments of the Iliad, more so than the Odyssey. And I think that it might have been used in education in Greek, maybe to learn the language. So the Iliad might have been very, very influential because people were learning their Greek on the Iliad, more than likely. But it doesn't mean that it was true. But if you read the book itself, like the book in no way, shape, or form ever caveats by saying this is a fictional story or anything like that. It just tells the story, and people are left to imagine it however they want to imagine it. So I think the Iliad and the Odyssey are good comparisons to religious things, and they use from time to time real physical places. So.
Yeah. I mean, that could have easily been the Bible. In history,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't have quite as many moral teachings. It was more so a story. But yeah, I think the Odyssey more so has like, I think that has more like moral tellings in it. I don't know. I don't want to speak on that. I haven't read the Odyssey, so I need to. That's a shame that I haven't, but I haven't. But I'm going to watch the movie here.
I probably will at some point. Yeah, it does have.
And I can't remember if the movie's called The Odyssey or if it's called the what's the guy's name that shoots the arrows through the axes? I can't think of his name. Shoots the arrows through the axes. Kurt. Oh, hopefully you know over here. Oh, it is The Odyssey is the name of the movie.
I thought it was The Odyssey, but I don't know the character you're talking about.
Odysseus.
Odysseus.
Yeah, that's the one who shoots the arrow.
Old brain.
Yeah. Chat is open. Chat is live. Anyone that wants to come in and join, you're welcome to do so. Hopefully it is pinned in the link in the side chat here. Yep, still seems to be pinned. So anyone and everyone's welcome to poke in and say hey. Let's see here something from Kurt here. I looked into the ideal about that story comes from Buddhism and didn't find much valuable. I think it's a legend. Maybe he's talking about someone else. Oh, he's talking about a previous comment to another gentleman here. Yeah. All right. So the ideal, if you don't want to operate inside of the framework of this, of the religion, I don't know many subjects to talk on this because I'm fairly deep into the religious side of how like these texts developed. I'm fairly interested in them, interested in the lore. I remember the first time I read First Clement, somewhere around chapter 35, he talks about the phoenix, which is obviously a mythical, creature, but he talks about the phoenix and he compares the Christian church to the phoenix and rising like the phoenix. And he talks about the phoenix as if it is an actual real thing that he speaks about the phoenix as. And now later people tried to do this. Oh, no, he was just using it as hyperbole. He was using this, that, and the other. No. To read his words, he clearly thought the phoenix was a real thing. And he's using it as an analogy to compare it to Christianity. So there's all of these different influences that early Christians have in this mythos. And I think Kurt actually just very recently wrote I'm sorry I didn't read the whole Substack on it, but how Hellenistic culture kind of influenced early Christianity. But I wondered if you were familiar with that at all, and these kind of little.
No, I was just going to say it sounds like Fall Out Boy lyrics. That's all.
Oh, Fall Out Boy lyrics.
Like a phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not really. Not really at all, honestly.
You
But
see little traces of it.
I'm not. Am I? Other people can join in here and join.
Yeah, they
conversation.
absolutely can join in.
Yeah,
it's in the side
Come on,
chat.
people.
Anybody and everybody.
Help me out here. I don't hold up the religious aspect of it like that. And I'm like, I can't do it because again, I'm like, let's roll dice. Let's make it random. What are we talking about? God did this. God did that. What? I mean, come on.
I don't want to lead the topic into areas that you don't have familiarity with. That's why generally whenever I have guests on here, whatever you're familiar with, whether I'm not familiar with it, but obviously you were raised atheist, or you were raised in a church family,
neglected, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So just didn't really it wasn't a pronounced thing in my life. I had friends who were religious. I went to church services with them sometimes, but all of it was really freaking uncomfortable for me. The whole touching and like say hi to you. I'm like, no, don't touch me. Get away from me, whatever. So we used to play sports together and things, but none of it ever seeded. So, and granted, my mother claims she was religious this whole time. I knew her, as a different person. I won't go into too much detail in her young life, but yeah, she didn't instill any of that in me. My father was a hard-nosed kind of pragmatist, didn't really do that much. So yeah, and I saw the bad sides. Like I had a neighbor that lived across the street from me. He was a good friend of mine, but his parents were born again Christian, and they did some horrible things to this boy. So in the name of religion, whatever it is. So that's I generally saw a lot of the bad aspects of it. I don't judge, I don't judge people for being religious, but it depends on what prescriptions you make for other people. Do you feel you need to proselytize? That's the kind of stuff I step away from. It's interesting to me as I like to learn so I can communicate with people who are religious and maybe step into their grounds a little bit. But I hit problems almost immediately because it's just so many presumptions. My head just gets flooded with, well, hold on, God first, and then we have martyrs and we have spirits and we have magical things happening between people. Why? Like I'm sorry. I get like Jojo the Clown. I get all skippity. So
all of these assumptions. It's like if you're not religion and you're having a conversation inside of a religious context, it's like you're seeing this flood of assumptions that has built this whole framework. And you're like, where did you start with A? You're talking about Z. And I don't even know how you got A down. Let's bring Kurt in here though. Kurt's over in the side chat.
Fantastic.
Kurt, how's it going, man?
Grab a drink.
How could Frodo have gotten back to the Shire without the eagles?
The eagles are an obvious explanation.
You have to have eagles, otherwise Frodo can't get back to the Shire. That's very clear.
Right. Well, I don't know everything that exists in that mythical world. You could have brought in anything that could have got him back to the Shire. The teleporter could have got him back there.
Strong point. I got to agree with that. Except the thing is that Sauron blocked all the teleporters. So
well.
But no, so much of like this type of discussion just seems to be begging the question over and over. I don't know if you've seen Shang Tsai's analysis of Michael Jones's resurrection Bayesian calculations, but oh my God, he's so bad. He puts the resurrection prior probability at 1 in a million, which would mean that there's 330 people in the United States today who have been resurrected.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and by the way, if you can mic check, I don't know if your mic's just too far away or if you're just on a non-traditional mic. I've turned you up a little bit. You cut out. I think you paused your mic. But yeah, that's interesting.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I did, though it was poor. I did hear you. I turned you up.
Okay,
Now I'm going to
so-
balance you back out a little bit.
Okay, I had on the wrong mic. I don't know why that happened.
It's okay. So that puts us at 300 people today that, by those probabilities, that has likely been resurrected.
In the United States alone, right?
Right. That accounts for all the pufferfish incidences, right?
Exactly.
And then some.
So it's just ridiculous. Like, he puts the prior at like 1 in 100 billion, because that's how many people there have ever been, and there's no like documented cases of resurrection. So, but the weird thing for me there is, and I think Sheng is great, and I think the whole thing is great, but I still don't get what it is in the New Testament that specifically says that Jesus's resurrection was different than the other resurrections. Because it doesn't use a different word, and it doesn't describe anything different from what happened to the Jairus's daughter or Lazarus. And they don't narrate Jairus's daughter dying or Lazarus dying. So we don't have any proof there's any difference at all.
Right. And it's not the first resurrection claim, obviously, as far as external literature either. But I've already said before, and I know we might have slight disagreements on the dates, but if we're looking at Paul as being the earliest one that writes, Paul is the first one, I think, that makes the claim, and he makes it inside of that 1 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 13, where he does the whole bit that he's just got to have been resurrected, man. If he wasn't resurrected, then it all means nothing, right? He does.
Yeah, but Paul's very clear that Paul's clear that the body that's resurrected is not the same as the body that dies.
Sure.
And that flesh and blood can't go to heaven.
Yeah, I've heard very recently, Alex O'Connor had a debate with a gentleman, and I can't think of his name. This was just posted a few days ago, where he's taken on this thing about, I think, what's his name? Mark Reed just covered this debate, actually, just last night. I saw a little bit of it on Mark Reed's channel, but I didn't watch the whole thing. But the idea was...
Kip Davis.
The idea was from his interlocutor, from Alex O'Connor's interlocutor, was that he was trying to blur the lines here and say that that's not what Paul was meaning whenever he said that no flesh can go before the, like, he was just using it as a colloquial thing, that we know that like heaven and earth is not the same, that we know that this is a spiritual, that is a spiritual plane. And that this is a physical plane, not that in the strictest sense that no flesh can go to heaven.
Yeah, that sounds like a con artist. So
obviously,
you have to understand that in the 1st and 2nd century, the idea of immateriality, the idea that you had this spirit that wasn't made of anything, did not exist. That idea was not functional. So even Plato, when he's describing the souls, the 3 souls in the body, they all are made of physical stuff, and they all reside in locations in the body. And that's the case for the authors of the New Testament writing in the 1st and 2nd centuries as well. That's why John has Jesus blow the Holy Spirit on them, because the Holy Spirit is made of wind.
Well, we get that already in Samson, right? Every time that power came on Samson, it says before power came on Samson, and the wind blew, right? Yep. It uses this as a terminology constantly. So when the lion came out and Samson like tore the lion apart, it says before this incident, and the wind blew. And then now Samson's like is empowered with this spirit and all. So this theme is throughout the entire text that that wind is associated with the spirit.
Yeah.
And the wind listeth where it bloweth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, is a parallel to the spirit. So
exactly. In the Hebrew scriptures, like the voice of God is probably thunder. And in the Hebrew scriptures, like the idea that God speaks from the weather is literally like the whole point of the speech in Job when he's in the whirlwind, right?
Yeah. So, Jeet, if you don't know it, we will sit here and nerd out on some Bible stuff that to the ad nauseum.
Don't worry, my wife is going to be home soon, so I'm going to have to jet out soon anyway. But yeah,
okay. All right.
Do what you guys will.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting history. I think it's very clear to me. And I'm sorry to say, Kurt, I got busy and I didn't read your whole article there that you put on subreddit, but I started reading a fair amount of the article
subreddit,
to start with.
Substack,
not subreddit. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. My wife came in and she didn't realize I was on a live stream. She got my attention more so than you did for a minute.
Well, I hope so. And I hope she's doing better.
Yes, she is doing much better. A lot of people have asked about my wife to make sure she's doing good. She is back, and she even got outside and insisted on pushing the lawnmower a little bit today. So
okay,
she's doing much better. But, so what have you been up to, man? Did you wind up having any more debates over there?
No, just the one with Tavo. I mean, I went on Tavo's stream, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. And of course, I think Paul's second century. So they found that very amusing because, of course, Paul's 1 Corinthians 15 creed was written 5 days after Jesus was resurrected, right?
I won't say it's anywhere near that time. I still think it's late 1st century myself, but I think there's a case to be made for 2nd century. I just don't.
Well, I have 3 strong points that I can bring forward.
Okay. All right, let's hear it.
Why I think that it's 2nd century, right? So, Point 1, you have a significant controversy in the New Testament that is about circumcision, right? Now, we don't know the exact details of this, but we do know that there was a legal proscription of circumcision, especially for people who were not Jewish at the time of Hadrian and never before, right? So it was like an internal Jewish matter. Philo doesn't talk about any Roman emperors who did anything about circumcision. Josephus doesn't mention that. There's no surviving 1st century text that talks about a controversy between the Romans and people cutting off the tips of their penises. So there's nothing like that in the literature at all until the reign of Emperor Hadrian. And the Emperor Hadrian has this pan-Hellenic, like, I want everybody to be like the Greeks thing. And so he outlaws circumcision. And that is one of the things that supposedly leads to the Bar Kokhba revolt, right? That's why they had to fight. It was
one of the things. There were several things that were a part of this revolt. I get that,
but all of a sudden now this is a huge controversy, right? And you can imagine in people who've already had to give up their temple sacrifices because of the Flavians, that now they can't even circumcise anymore. Well, that's going to be a huge controversy. But when is that controversy going to happen? Right before Marcion puts out the Apostolicon, right? So it's going to be a very live issue in that exact moment. And then, oh, by the way, here's the first mention ever outside of any like confessional documents of actual epistles by Paul. Now, even if you hold the 1st Clement being 1st century, which I think is not a good choice, but let's say you do, he doesn't describe any Pauline epistles. He just has him as an authority, right? He doesn't quote anything from the epistles. So the epistles themselves don't exist in reference by anyone until after Marcion. And then after Marcion, they take over all of Christianity. So that's one strong argument, right? Second thing is, and
shore it up with something else,
is very clear on this, that all the offices that are described in the Pauline epistles presuppose some sort of existing church structure that there's just no archaeological or physical or textual evidence existing anytime in the 1st century, right? Now that's Spearline's opinion is that 1st Clement is exactly the same thing, and it's dated like after 160. But there's this really critical window between Hadrian and Tatian's Diatessaron, where something very, very important is happening within Christianity, such that...
Hold on. I want to be clear because I feel like you think that most of the scholarship is arguing for a different date for Clement. They're arguing, I think, 96 to 99 is where they're putting
right. That's
Clement,
1st century.
2nd Clement. Right, that's 1st century. Very end of the 1st century. almost into the 2nd century, but that's where I think the majority are putting in, and maybe there's a lot of more Christian ones that are pulling it back that direction, but that's I think that's where they're placing it, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but First Clement doesn't even mention his name. It doesn't even say who it's from. It reads like it's
if it does, it's in the first chapter.
Sermon to the Corinthian. No, I don't think it mentions his name. I think it's ascribed to him, but it doesn't mention his name.
You might be right. Second Clement is definitely
incredibly long. It's much, much longer than any actual letter that we know of that was actually a letter that someone wrote.
Agreed.
And it reads just like a sermon about all kinds of stuff.
It's like 42 chapters or something. I mean, it's fairly like 30. I mentioned it's like 32 or 35.
It's
that the Phoenix
insanely long. So it's just, to me, it's not like great, right? Even if we take Acts seriously, which I don't think we should, right? But let's take Acts seriously. Let's say Acts is written in the 1st century, which, I don't think anybody who's seriously studied that believes that anymore. C.J. Cornthwaite is like, no, Acts uses Josephus. It's been 2nd century for sure. But let's say that it's 1st century. Well, why don't they mention Paul's letters? Acts doesn't know anything about Paul's letters. You'd never know the guy wrote a letter in his whole life if all you read was Acts.
Okay, I want to give confirmation. First Clement does not mention his name.
That's correct.
It's attributed to him. You are right. Okay. Read the whole damn thing not too long ago, Kurt, and did not pick up on that.
Yeah, well. So to me, that's that's a very key point, right? The existence of an entire large church structure at the time that Paul is purported to have been writing, he's setting up these churches, right? And how long does he have to set up the church in Galatia? Galatia is larger than California in area, or at least comparable, right? It's comparable in size. So where the hell is Galatia? And who's he writing? And he's setting up one church in Galatia. It's a massive area. I mean, it doesn't fit. All of these look just more to me like, they're ascribing to circumstances that exist in the 2nd century. Now, in the 2nd century after Marcion, we know Marcion's a 2nd generation Christian, right? Well, 2nd generation, 140. And then let's take Pliny the Younger seriously and say Pliny the Younger is telling an accurate, completely total, correct description of what he experienced, right? He's in Bithynia. Bithynia is where Sinope is, which is where Marcion is from. And in Bithynia, there's people who said, yeah, about 10 or 15 years ago, I thought it was good. I thought it was smart, but I gave up doing it and I don't do it anymore. He interviews all these people who've left the Christian faith. And what does Pliny actually say? He says they worship Christ as God. Well, Christ is a title. It's not a name. He doesn't mention Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a bit of your, or what was the argument? Christ before Jesus?
That's Jaron and Matthew's thing, Christ before Jesus. But
Christ
I don't disagree with the position that Pliny is not a witness to any gospel narrative or any like Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus Ben Ananias tradition. He's not a witness to any Jesus tradition.
Yeah, Pliny's
right? Reading Pliny, all you can say is there's people who are Christians and I don't know what to do about it, which is weird if Nero was burning them like torches and it was a huge deal that everybody had to pay attention to and everybody knew about.
Yeah. Josephus, though I do think his document with Jesus Ben Ananias, I think it is influential to the total lore and story of Jesus.
Oh, the story of Mark? The trial of Mark, like Theodore Wheaton?
No. I'm talking about Josephus's mention of
yes, exactly.
Joseph and the
Jesus Ben Ananias in Josephus.
Yep.
In Mark's trial, the trial of Jesus Ben Ananias and Mark's trial of Jesus have 22 separate parallels that have been identified in the scholarship.
Interesting.
Even Craig Evans agrees that it seems likely that either Mark is drawing from a similar tradition of Jesus Ben Ananias' trial, or he's drawing from Josephus.
Yeah, directly, one or the other. It seems like that there's some connection there. And whenever I read the section about him being beaten, that was describing the Jesus character being beaten, and then still saying that the temple was going to fall, or that he didn't say the temple was going to fall, but that something was coming to an end of the temple or that dispensation. And it talked about with the lashes on his back. And I remember reading that and I was like, dude, this is totally Jesus of Nazareth character that they're depicting here that we traditionally know.
Are you talking about Carabbas, the Carabbas story in Philo?
It is Philo. It is shortly after. It's talking about Josephus and Jesus, the priest Josephus. You know what I'm talking about? Or no, Joseph. I'm sorry. The priest Joseph and Jesus. There's a text specifically that says that. And this is before he died, though, before Josephus covers him dying. I think he gets hit with a damn cannon or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember what
you're talking about. Jesus ben Ananias right now.
Jesus ben
Ananias at his trial stays silent, and it's very, very similar to what Mark describes for Jesus of Nazareth in the Gospel of Mark. But following that directly is Mark using Philo's description of the mock coronation of a guy named Carabbas, not Barabbas, but instead of a C at the beginning, just put a B, and it's exactly the same name. And in Philo's mocking of Carabbas, they give him a fake crown, and they put a purple robe on him, and they make fun of him and parade him through the streets.
Yeah, very similar, obviously.
So this is an oral tradition, it's an oral tradition that's like being derived from people telling stories they read in Josephus and Philo, not from any like historical event that took place.
Yeah, there could have been something that influenced both the stories, though. I don't know that, or it could have been the original story that was influencing the second story, or you could just have an original story that is going along, and you realize there's these little pieces that that would make the story better, and you wind up incorporating them into your paradigm.
Yeah, and that's my take on what happens in Matthew, right? Matthew takes Mark, and then he's also got a copy of the Didache, and he takes a lot of the sayings from the Didache that aren't ascribed.
Whoa, that dating is crazy, though, Kurt, I got to stop you. You're talking about the Didache you think was before Matthew?
Yeah.
Really?
Think about the Didache. It has the same sayings, but it doesn't say this is what Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount. It doesn't say anything about that. It's just got all the sayings.
Well, I'll say this. The Didache also has the baptism in the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, which would account for why Matthew's saying it. Right? I generally think that the Didache said it because Matthew said it, but I guess it could be the other way around.
The arrow could go the other direction. And think about it this way. If you're writing the Didache after Matthew, wouldn't you mention it?
Yes.
Now, there's a reason you can see why Matthew wouldn't mention the Didache, because he's putting the words in the mouth of Jesus. So he's not going to say, "Oh,
absolutely." You could see why Matthew wouldn't mention that it's coming from the Didache. He wouldn't mention it,
but the Didache would. They're not trying to hide anything.
That would give more legitimacy to them,
right? It was, God Himself said this to us, so it must be true. That's the other thing. Paul never quotes Jesus like verbatim at all.
Yeah. I actually have something that me and Ed were talking about on his channel the other day that I wanted to bring up here. Let me see if I can bring it onto the screen.
Well, did you want my third argument?
Yes, hit me with it.
I've already alluded to it. So it's the necessary nature of the Pauline epistles in relation to like Josephus and like Greek philosophical ideas, right? So there was such a strong belief that Pauline theology was based on Seneca that they had to forge a series of letters back and forth between Paul and Seneca in the 4th century to make sense of all these parallels people were seeing between Paul and Seneca. Well, to be influenced by Seneca, you have to live after Seneca. And Paul, on our standard timeline, is living like before Seneca is like widely published or spread throughout the Roman Empire. He's like an advisor to Nero during this period of time. So when we see all these ideas coming from Seneca into Paul, that certainly puts the composition dates to me at least into the 10th decade of the first century, and to be much more likely in like second and third decade of the second century. And again, if you assume Josephine influence, you're already pushing everything past 93.
No, I thought Josephus was as early as 80 or something. Now, are we generally dating Josephus?
Let's say no. One of his, I think it's either the Jewish War. I think was the one that was published first, and I do think Jesus Ben Ananias is mentioned in the Jewish War.
He is mentioned.
So for that, you could get that, but for the stuff about like the history of the Jews and the antiquities of the Jews, anything that's depending on that text, which Luke definitely does, that's not, I think, until 93.
Okay.
And, oh, by the way, like 10, 15 years later under Trajan, Pliny's mentioning there's all these Jews who took it up about 10 or 15 years ago, and they're Christians now.
I want to address something that's going on over in the side chat. A few different people. First of all, I see the comment that, and I don't know the context. I'd have to go back. That most people living in Saudi Arabia were Christian for 600 years before Islam. I agree that the religion was around. How much was in Saudi Arabia? I don't think we know that. I think that's
I think Nabatea is a much better source for the text that we have, but I don't know.
Also, I seen somewhere they didn't know what a god was in certain places where there were no religion yet. This is absolutely ridiculous. The idea that there was areas where there was no religion is just hilarious to me. That's nonsense. Everybody had their own different religions and traditions. Anywhere people didn't have answers at the time and they didn't have standards of epistemology, they came up with answers of supernatural divine beings. There's not an area that was void of it in our early human ignorance. So there's a few other little crazy things that I've been seeing on the side chat, but that's just some that I wanted to mention.
I mean, you just need to look at Siberia and North America to see that like there were completely parallel, non-influenced systems of religious belief that had no contact with like Western religious ideas, and yet were still quite clearly religions that tried to answer the same questions.
Yeah, I think the Stoic idea that was coming about in the Greek culture is also about abstaining from physical, from money, from monetary stuff, from even wines and stuff. We see this in the Pythagorean groups. I can't help but when I read the Pythagorean, the 71 golden verses, to see stuff that the character Jesus was constantly portraying as, whether it's you can't enter into heaven, or it's harder to enter into heaven than a camel through the eye of a needle for a rich man. These kind of things about earthly possessions and that to own nothing and possess nothing. We've never seen this from the Jewish culture. This is not something that was a part of the Jewish culture whatsoever. And now all of a sudden it's prevalent. It's obviously prevalent because of Stoics and because of people like Pythagorean that have influenced the Greek culture.
Yeah,
but
and
it wasn't
Scott,
in the Jewish culture.
Robin, you guys are in the chat. You guys are welcome to come up. Yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, that said, I'm going to put this on the screen real quick. This Matthew one. I mentioned this just the other day on Ed's channel, and I just wanted to highlight it here. Let me see if I can get this on the damn screen. Share screen. So this is something from Matthew. This is in chapter 24 at the very beginning of this. And this is probably why we, for the most part, think that Matthew was post 70. He starts this, the writer of this is starting this story like he needs to create a way to have a conversation about the temple. He says, as Jesus came out of the temple and was going away, his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple. So the way that this is being structured is like he came out of the temple and his disciples pointed out to him, the building itself of the temple, and he's setting this up. Then he asked them, you see all these, You see all of these, do you not? Truly, I tell you that not one stone will be left unturned, or one stone will be left upon another. All will be torn down. This is so clear to me that the Matthew is writing after the temple has fallen.
Yeah.
That he would in no way, shape, or form brought this up at the beginning of the chapter. Hey, look back at the temple and let's set this up as a narrative. Like, it's so clear to me that this
now
is.
Now you're in one of my other arguments that what didn't even make the top 3, which is the actual destruction of the temple, where like not one stone was left on top of another, didn't happen until the second abomination of desolation, which is when Hadrian turned it into a temple to Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, which is 135 CE, right? So the idea that first of all, the temple hadn't even been finished in construction in 33 CE. It continued to be constructed until 60 to 65. And that's one of the reasons for the revolt under the Flavians, was that the idea had always been that when the temple was finally completed and it was made in the way that the Torah wanted it to make, and sacrifices were working correctly, that the whole world would convert to Judaism and Israel would be the shining light that would like show the pathway to God to the world. And when that didn't happen, they were like, well, it's because these Romans are here defiling us, and they revolted, right? So, but the Flavians didn't like tear the entire temple down. But Hadrian did, and Hadrian made it a temple to Zeus. So that seems to suggest Matthew is written sometime in the 2nd century, right?
I don't know. I told you, man, I'm stitched at the hip of the scholarship generally, the consensus of the scholarship. And while I do know and I do understand that there are other things that influence that, it's difficult for me to venture out too far away from it without having done a lot of comfortable and confident studying on the subject myself.
What's the parsimonious explanation for Matthew knowing that besides magic?
That for Matthew knowing what now?
If Matthew's written between 70 and 80 CE, when
no, he's at 90. The scholarship thinks
there's temples standing through that entire time. There's still walls. It's been sacked. It's been like disrupted, but it isn't like completely gone. It's not until Hadrian dismantles it and turns it into a temple of Jupiter that it's actually not one stone standing upon another.
Okay. That's interesting. So, and that would have happened at what, about 80?
No, that would have happened in 130 to 135 after the Bar Kokhba revolt.
Yeah.
Marcion's first Evangelion and Apostolicon get published in 140, Robert.
You're pushing them now all the way into 130 or 140. You're pushing Matthew into about 140 is what it sounds like. You're pushing it.
I'm pushing Matthew as a response to Mark, who probably is writing around that time. That's my guess. But again, it doesn't matter to my like fundamental position about what Paul is talking about, whether Mark is writing in 74 or Mark is writing in 135, right? Like my take on what Mark is doing doesn't matter for that timing. What Mark is doing could have happened in 73. I just don't think Mark could have written what he wrote at least until like 82, 83. And again, there's no like extra Christian evidence of Christianity until Pliny the Younger, from my point.
What? You don't take that evidence from Pompey's crosses on the wall, man? You don't that's clear cut, man, that there were Christians in Pompeii, man.
No, the more I look at it, I'm not even convinced that the Alexamenos graffito is actually even talking about Christianity at all.
You talking about the donkey-headed one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. There's an Egyptian god who was depicted by a donkey head, and an Egyptian ankh just looks like a cross with a head on it. And it's quite possible this was some sort of Egyptian mythography and iconography that we just don't know about at the time, that like might have been like a meme at the time. Like, you know how memes come and go?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might have, I mean, again, look at the iconography of Christianity during this era, right? And like directly after that, you get all kinds of Christ figures, right? But the Christ that's being depicted is almost always what's called a Creophorus, which just looks exactly like Hermes when he's carrying the ram over his shoulders. Like you couldn't tell whether it was Christian or Hermetic by simply looking at the figure. You'd have to like know the provenance and what were the circumstances. And then the other iconography that's very early in Rome and the Vatican shows Jesus as Apollo in the chariot, or Jesus as Orpheus playing a lyre. And in none of them does he have a beard. So if he had a beard at the Shroud of Turin time, they'd sure forgotten about it by 100 years later.
If people don't know what it is that we're talking about here, and I'm sorry, this is a horrible picture of it, but this is kind of a reconstruction over on the side, but this is a graffitied piece of art that we're referring to that's generally argued by many as one of the earliest depictions of, and though it was made satirical and making fun of Christianity, they use it generally as an early example that Christianity was around.
I'm not 100% on that. It's possible, but I don't think it's demonstrated.
Well, I don't know either way. I don't know. I don't think it's generally highly contested.
Worships his God. It doesn't say worships Christ or worships Jesus or worships like anything specific. And because there's that donkey-headed Egyptian god, I just don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly think that one's Christian. I think that is an outside reference to Christianity. I think it's a mocking reference to Christianity. Could it be something that else? It could be. I mean, it may very well.
It's certainly not unambiguously Christian.
Right. I agree. But that's what we're referring to. Do you know what that one's dated as?
180s.
180.
So
okay.
It doesn't help anything.
It doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, we know by the time of Justin, there's like a theology and argumentation about Christianity. So we know something has to happen between 120 and 150 to create the structures that exist by the time 150 is there. Yeah. Oh, and also, when I was on the stream, I was like, well, you know that like there's all kinds of reports of Egyptian emperors or pharaohs or Roman emperors being taken up into heaven right after they die, but as being reported by eyewitnesses. And they're like, oh, come on, where are you coming up with that? And it's from Justin Martyr. Yeah. Justin Martyr says, you guys all bring up these eyewitnesses of people going up into heaven. They're like, nobody said that. No, really?
Yeah. I got to tell you, Justin Martyr, First Apologies is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, my God.
I'll tell you that now. Stops. The second one's okay. But I was reading, and then I started, because I was working, I was listening to the First Apology on audiobook, and I was hearing the use of the word atheist in chapter 6.
And yeah, he says, yep, we sure are.
Right, exactly. We're all atheists.
Of course we're atheists.
Like, so, yeah, Justin Martyr's First Apology is the gift that keeps on giving, and that was, very early Christianity.
Well, that's the one where he says Plato got everything from Moses.
Yes, that is the one. That is the one where he said he got it all from Moses.
Plato in the Timaeus gets the idea that the demiurge made a chi, which is a cross, to create the universe. The Greek letter chi is his description. Yeah. And he says he got that from Moses putting the snake up on the staff in the book of Exodus, which Christians have forever said that's like a prefiguring of the crucifixion in the Hebrew scriptures, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's the source of the crucifixion in the New Testament, right?
But I've also heard it argued that is a symbol of like a false idol, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because the story originally goes that they started worshiping it, basically. Mm-hmm. That it would heal them and all, that everybody that looked upon it would heal them.
But it's a reference to the rod of Asclepius. It's obviously it's an attempt to take a Greek idea and say, no, ours is older and you guys got it from us.
Well, I've said before, the Mayat is, if the Egyptians were ever captors of the Jews, and the Jews were ever held in prison by the Egyptians, then there's no need to explain where their morals came from, where the Ten Commandments come from, because the Ten Commandments are already in the Mayat. Like they're like every one of the Ten Commandments, with exception to keep the Sabbath holy. With the exception to that, every moral principle and more was already in the Mayat, and it predates any Ten Commandments by just years and years. So,
but the Sabbath comes from Babylon.
Yes,
even the
Sabbath
word comes from Babylon.
Yeah.
So,
well, they didn't get that. I'm just saying, if they were not held captive by the Egyptians, but I'm just saying, if they were, and we follow this story and say, oh yeah, they were held captive by the Egyptians, then they would have been taught the Mayat rules, from childhood. Obviously, they would have knew the Mayat sayings that I have not, treated my neighbor unfairly, I have not stolen from, and so forth and so on. They just incorporate all of these things into their Ten Commandments, but voila, it shows where they got, their moral principles from. Of course, that's not what happened, because they were never slaves of the Egyptians to start with.
Well, so are you familiar with Handel's theory on that?
That there was a small group?
No.
Oh.
No. His position is that the memory of the Exodus is really just a memory of the Egyptian control of Canaan prior to the Sea Peoples, right? So under Merneptah, we know that the Egyptians subdued all of Palestine, and it was like a state that was owned by the Egyptians. They were vassals, so the Egyptians probably would have done like corvée labor projects and been in control and had them in a kind of bondage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the memory of being in bondage to Egypt, is just the memory of Egyptian control of the Levant,
which obviously. That's fine. It wouldn't influence any other language or anything. That would make sense, because the Jewish vocabulary seems to have no Egyptian influence on it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect, because they're just overlords.
Exactly.
They're not controlling the society at an individual level. Like when the Ottomans took over a place, it's not like they started to speak Turkish.
Right. Whereas if there were actual slaves inside of the main city of Egypt, no, 100% their language would have, they would have been speaking Egyptian. And even if they were back and forward a little bit of this language, a little bit of that, like the influence over the Jewish language, it would have just been so profound.
No, the number of loanwords would be huge, right? Which is exactly what we see in the exile. All of a sudden, huge numbers of Aramaic words get put in, huge numbers of Persian words get put in. And then we can tell that Daniel's written in a Hellenistic period because it's got Greek words.
Yeah, I'm interested one day to see your whole timeline layout, because you're mentioning Daniel, and I don't know where are you putting Daniel as far as coming in?
BCE.
150 BCE. Okay, and you put that ahead of like Maccabees, or have you looked at Maccabees?
Probably very similar to the Maccabees, very similar time frame, very similar, maybe the same author.
Okay, interesting.
I haven't seen. I'm sure people have stylometry. I'm sure they can tell, but like certainly closely working with the Maccabean period. It's basically a Vaticanium ex eventu, right? It's a prophecy of things that have already happened. And so what they want to do is lionize the Maccabees. So the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego story is just taking the Maccabees and putting them back in the Persian period.
Yeah. Antangelo said here, and I'm glad he's finally said it, I hope all theists understand how ridiculous the proposition is. I don't know how someone thinks it's meaningful to construct a worldview around the proposition to reject another. Yeah, that's because they don't reject another one and then build a worldview around that. They try to build the worldview based on the available information and evidence, and it doesn't have anything to do with building it around the rejection of another.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I'd strongly recommend that Otangelo read David Friedrich Strauss's book, The Life of Jesus Critically Examined, which was written in 1835. One of the first things that Strauss does is discuss, should we regard the testimony of the Hebrews and the Christians with different skeptical lenses than we regard the testimonies of the Greeks and the Babylonians and the Persians? And he says, no, we should not. We should examine them both in exactly the same way. And if we would disbelieve something from the Persians and the Babylonians, we should do the same for the Hebrews and the Christians. It's a very, very reasonable position, and it doesn't require specially privileging anything. You don't have to build your life around discrediting one group or the other. I just as much disagree that Julius Caesar went to heaven as that Jesus was resurrected. I think they're both wrong.
Come on, man. You don't believe Julius Caesar went to heaven, man?
I don't, even though we have a month named after him, right? I always want to bring that up when they say, well, why do we call it, why do we date our calendar to Jesus? Because you have July and August in your calendar. Does that mean that they went to heaven?
Well, and even the days of the week. I mean, every single one of the days of the week's named after a god. So
that's why there's a Marvel comic about Thor, right?
Right. I don't have a problem with celebrating Friday or Frig Day. Okay, I don't have an issue with that. So,
Otangelo, the reason we're talking about this is because we live in a society in which the idea that crazy shit like the Shroud of Turin is true is held correct by a large number of people who win elections. When that stops, we'll talk about something else. But right now, it hasn't stopped. And the Shroud of Turin is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. By the way, Otangelo, I strongly recommend you watch the debate Tavo had on his channel a couple of days ago between some insane shroud miracle guy who said, why couldn't God have just made the shroud appear in Turin in the 13th century? And James Fodor, who has an actual serious position on the shroud.
There's nothing you can't fix with a little miracle.
What's your miracle? He's basically like, no, God would want regular people to have a miracle that would verify Jesus to them without them needing to get scientific training. And the shroud is perfect for that. So if we know God's mind, we can know that the shroud is true.
Perfect. I love the argument that, why couldn't he have just moved it into the 13th century? Like Jesus walked out of the cave and God just poofs it over to the 13th century. That's just where it shows up. That's amazing.
That's how it worked.
Ed, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going all right. I always enjoy dating discussions. So.
Have we taken the veils off the scriptures for you today, Ed?
Probably. No, because I got into a whole. I had to, because I was dealing with that insane guy Mike Jones, and he's going through the dating of the guy. His video on the dating of the Gospels is just so awful. It's just really bad.
What does he put him? 35, 36?
He puts Mark at about 4. He puts Mark at 45, 50.
Yeah, he does Mark, but Matthew on that video he put it 50.
Matthew and
so Luke, he agrees with Mark at priority, which means Mark has to come in 40, right?
Yeah.
Which basically means it's magic. Jesus knew the temple would fall.
Correct. Yeah. And then all the other synoptics are the same, so it's all magic stuff. So it's great stuff. Yeah. And then he does agree with everybody about John being later, 90, because John lived to be forever years old.
Right. I agree because the Bible
says Mormons think John's still alive. So
yeah, I know.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. The
You know what,
mortals
I might
have
have heard
four
this.
immortal people who run around the earth, right? There's there's the disciple John, and then there's the three. I'm forgetting their name now, but there's like three people mentioned in the Book of Mormon who are supposedly still alive and running around.
Yeah. There's also an apocryphal story about a Jew who was told that he wouldn't die until Jesus returned, and so he's around too.
The Jew that was told he wouldn't die, right? Yeah, I don't know the name.
I forgot.
Yeah,
3 Nephites.
There's several. There's several of those stories, but yeah, Jones puts all of that stuff early, so within the living memory of the events. That's why, and they're all written by eyewitnesses or associates. So.
Otangelo's always got to bring it back to something about homos. I don't know.
I don't think that kills atheism.
Well, come explain it to us, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I can explain the problem of homochirality and the solution to homochirality in 2 minutes.
All right, hit us with it.
So what he's talking about is the fact that all of the isomers that life uses have a specific chirality. In other words, these are molecules double-handed, and they can be left-handed or right-handed. And yet within living organisms, typically you're only going to use one type of that instead of using a racemic mixture, which is both types. So all you need for that to take place, though, is a tiny initial advantage to one chiral form over another, such that it improves replication by 0.5% to 0.2%. Anything on that order will eventually completely optimize the system to only using the slightly more efficient version of the amino acid or nucleic acid or whatever it might be, and you'll completely get rid of all of the other isomers. So all it takes is a tiny increase in efficiency, just like you would see in a printing press or in a any kind of industrial program, right? If you're making cars and you can make a small modification to a spec that allows you to process the cars through the factory 1% more quickly, you'll do it. And if that locks you into something that down the line when the cars are being repaired is annoying as shit, that's just going to be the way it is.
But man, there's not been a solution since 1848.
Yeah, I just gave you the solution.
No, oh man, ignorance sometimes. Nobody's ever tried to do that before. I'm like, have you bothered to look that up?
It's all grounding out. It doesn't matter, even if his argument is 100% true. Let's give him the entire argument, and Kurt doesn't know what he's talking about at all. Kurt, you don't know what you're talking about, and we're still left with this is still an argument from ignorance. It's still we don't know, therefore.
Therefore, God.
No, it's an argument from full knowledge of divine psychology.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
He knows that God would have wanted homochirality because God hates dextroisomers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
God wants all his amino acids to be left-handed, and fuck all the right-handed amino acids. They can go to hell. In fact, hell is composed entirely of people who are exactly like people on Earth, except all their amino acids are the antichiral form. And that's one of the things that makes them suffer so horribly, right?
It's similar to one of these arguments that, well, we're here, therefore that's what God must have intended. And there's really no distinction from that to this pin is here, right? Therefore this has to be what it's all for, right?
No.
This is the whole reason.
Yeah, I was talking on Gretchen's stream last night about this. I'm like, it's like the lint in your belly button going, I'm the whole reason this man is walking around.
Right.
Without everything being designed exactly the way it is, I wouldn't be a collection of lint in his belly button.
Yes,
so it
true.
Must be designed for me.
That's the mud puddle analogy all over again. I think I like the lint better than the mud puddle, but it doesn't have it doesn't have
the proper rubbing of the shirt on the opening of the belly button.
Right.
You wouldn't get the lint.
It all come to be.
Yes, it all makes sense now.
Well, I think the newer argument eventually is going to become AI. Obviously, AI was what was meant to be, and humans were just a pathway for that AI to come about.
That's gotta be
Evolution just needed us to make AI. That's
yes.
Has anyone seen the movie, the Spielberg / Kubrick movie AI with Haley Joel Osment? Oh, it's so good. Strongly recommend you watch it.
Have y'all seen Earth Plus Plastic from Carl? Not Carl. What's his name?
I haven't.
God damn, what's his name? The old stand-up comedian that was one of the early. I don't know why I was about to say Carl. He's the one with the beard. He's passed away now. He's an older stand-up comedian.
Carlin?
An atheist. George Carlin, that's him. Carlin did Earth Plus Plastic, and he did that. Maybe that's the answer to the age-old question of why are we here? Plastic.
To make plastic.
The Earth wanted plastic, just couldn't figure out how to make it. Needed humans.
Well, the other thing with any design argument that is being made here, and Otangelo is making a really strong one, I think, is that if there is design to the universe, then the designed thing is the whole universe, right? Mm. So unless we can show that the entire universe is like specifically structured in such a way as to make us happen, then we are a byproduct. We're like the dross that gets skimmed off the top of the universe, because what it seems like the universe is clearly designed to do is create galaxies with black holes in the middle.
Clearly.
And so like we just happen to be forming in the gravity whirlpools that form around black holes in the center of galaxies. We're not the intent. We're the byproduct.
We're a byproduct.
We're the whey protein from the cheese industry that we're getting repackaged and sold as protein powders that we need to get big and muscular, because they don't want to have to throw it all away. So if they can tell people it's good for them and sell it to them, they'll make a lot more money.
Yep, correct.
Yeah. In a post-fact observation of these things, like all of these things exist, like, is there even a proper way to say which one gives priority as far as why an intelligent thing? Because you could be like, okay, black holes are larger, and let's just make the criteria larger. So the larger, most prevalent, most mass, that thing is the priority.
That
obviously
thing greater than which no greater thing can be conceived, right?
There you go. There you go. So, or you could say like something like complexity, or you could say, some kind of molecule arrangement. What's the best molecule arrangement? And we could be like, pyrite is the reason, right? That the whole universe exists is because. So what we're really doing is we're taking something that we have some value on, and we say, okay, surely that has to be the reason, all of this came to be. And we're just applying our value system onto a God or onto a creator system.
I don't think anybody handled reasons as effectively as Hoobastank did back in the 90s, but
reasons.
On the other hand, no, you don't know Hoobastank. Sorry.
No.
I'm not a perfect person. You don't know?
I do know the song. I do know the song, but yeah, okay.
Found a reason for me.
You come out of left field somewhere, and I appreciate how far out of left field you come.
You got to dig deep to get a Hoobastank reference through on Robert. All right. No, so that's the thing. A reason is an explanation, right? And do you know what determines the adequacy of an explanation?
What's that?
The exhaustion of the skepticism of the listener.
That's possible.
Right? That's what determines if an explanation is adequate, is the person keeps up asking you further questions.
Yeah, I guess so. That's the ground of it. Like and if you have agency, that seems to ground out there. It's like doing the blue. Why is the sky blue? Well, if you give your child the answer, God likes the color blue, that generally stops the end of the.
There you go.
There's an agency that grounds. That's the bottom of it. Whereas if you go the other direction and you talk about, light waves and frequencies. Well, it keeps going and going and going. Like, why do we perceive it as blue? Well, right. Exactly. It just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my
It's
goodness.
whys all the way down. There's no like end to the explanations.
Yeah.
There's almost like there's an infinite chain of explanations to go along with the infinite chain of causes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've been seeing this one lately that's kind of related to this about the first causer. I've been seeing Phyllis Sober does this argument about that there could have been more than one causer, right?
Oh,
That there's no
absolutely.
particular reason to think that there was only one singular
That's
cause. Like
That's a
in the
big
same way that we have a building or a house, 10 people built this building or whatnot. And I thought this is an interesting one. I used to go another direction and say, like chain of events, like just because the universe doesn't mean that the one necessary being for the universe did not have another necessary being. So you could think of like a God was made B God, and then A God's no longer necessary once B God is. So you don't know how far down the chain, even if you know that a God made the universe. Let's say if we could grant that, you still don't know if he is God 134, right? You don't.
Well, that's what the Mormons think. That's the Mormon belief, by the way.
Is it?
Is that,
Yes,
there's
it
an
is.
infinite regressive
is.
gods.
It's a regressive
Okay.
God.
So
The
but
Gnostics do that too.
it's so much better than that. So here's the intuition pump I use to like try to get, because actually in my job, the idea that there's a single cause of things is like deadly and bad and like needs to be abolished and gotten rid of, because the idea that there are single causes is a great way to have people end up dead, because you don't know what's actually going on because you think there's a single cause, right? So imagine you have like you're on a farm and there's a trough that has a drain in it, and there's a faucet next to the trough, and there's also a hose that's going into the trough, and it begins to rain, and the faucet is on, and there's the hose is also turned on, and the rain is going on, and then a leaf gets stuck onto the drain where it's like a flutter valve, right? And it's blocking a little bit, and then the water starts to overflow. Well, which water is overflowing? Which water is overflowing? And I stop the faucet.
All of it.
I turn the faucet off and it stops overflowing. Does that mean the faucet was the cause of the overflow? Yes, if I'm dumb. If I'm dumb and I'm not thinking properly, I will think, oh, the faucet was turned off and then the water stopped overflowing, so the faucet must have caused the overflow. But that is not correct, right? And that is the norm in causation. The norm is multiple effects combining in a given moment to cause, if we want to use that word, an event to take place, which I think, of course, I'm causal anti-realist. I use cause just grammatically here to like intuition pump people.
Yeah. Someone told me you were a causal anti-realist. That's a little far out from me, Kurt. Can you explain?
Show me where the cause was in that sequence that I gave you.
Well, I mean, just in general.
Where was the cause?
In general, we're talking about it like a transfer of energy. Let's say that we have some kind of kinetic interaction.
But the energy is always there. The energy is moving around. It's not necessarily causing anything.
Right, but if a rock is in motion in space, for example,
an object in motion tends to remain in motion unless acted upon by some other force.
Right. So then if a rock is in motion in space, do you tend to think that something acted upon it to make it get in motion to start with?
Action is the thing agents do.
Okay. Well, okay.
So that's a problem, right? With our language presumes an agent, presumes a subject, and presumes an object.
No, I agree. There is a language
we see
problem.
One damn thing after another. We impute the cause by the way we structure our sentences. But there are other languages that don't do that, right? In some Native American languages, you wouldn't say there's a rabbit over there. You'd say it's rabbiting over there, which is probably much more accurate.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, it is.
Because life itself isn't an energy flow phenomenon. stop the energy flow. Like I go into all of your rooms and I take out all the oxygen. What happens within 5 minutes?
Well,
everything grinds to a halt. Yeah. Everything grinds to a halt. So is it correct to say that you're caused by the oxygen in your room?
No, but that's the problem with saying like multiple causes, or there are multiple causes. Like we could say this house was, even if we're talking about causal agents, obviously multiple different causal agents were involved. Even with the universe, you could say there could be multiple causes that are involved, but that's not to say just because multiple causes can be involved in making something be in a particular way, that there aren't any causes.
But there's just multiple causes. No, I don't think there are multiple causes. I think there's a web of causation. You might say it that way. But within that web of causation, any explanatory pull you're pulling from that web of causation is where your attention happens to focus at the moment, which means you're not going to give complete explanations, and your explanations are not the cause. And if cause exists supervening on top of the actual events, there's no demonstration of that.
Yeah, I'll give you a primary example, I guess, that to some degree supports that. When we take a piece of paper and hold it up in the front of us and we blow on that piece of paper, we could say that us blowing is the cause. But obviously, every individual particle that is in between there that is interacting with the particles that we're blowing out, every individual particle is a part of that network of cause that is making the paper move.
Yeah, but if you want a really good like intuition pump on causal anti-realism, think about a bullet hitting glass, right? Which molecule of the bullet hits which molecule of the glass to cause the glass to shatter?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's no, it's all collectively, but this gets more into there is no Apple argument that you had before.
Again, well, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd is a really important number to keep in your head when you're thinking about stuff like this.
And why is that again?
That's the total number of hydrogen atoms in a single gram of hydrogen.
Okay.
All right.
So all the interactions that we infer to be causal are actually just statistical. And that's like most of the language in life sciences and in physics is statistical now. It doesn't like say, oh, we know this is cause A, cause is cause B. In like philosophical deductive certainty, we make causal inference on the basis of statistical regularities or epidemiological correlations or things like that. But we don't say thing X is 100% certain to be caused by thing Y. And again, when I'm teaching students, I definitely don't ever want them to think that in a given circumstance, a given event had a single cause.
Yeah, this statement here, I just can't begin to tell you how crazy it is. Atheists always want to demonstrate God, but turn a blind eye to the quest of demonstrate that nature is all there is. I don't, first of all, think that anyone said here that nature is all there is, but everything that we can observe, that we can demonstrate, is what we can know. It's not that what exists, it's what we can know. This is not an ontological question, and I don't know why theists keep messing this up. This is an epistemological question. Like, if we can't demonstrate it, if we can't observe it, if we can't falsify it, by what measure can we say we know it? We can't. It's just not, it's not adequate. It's not right to say we know it. That's not to say that something doesn't exist that we don't know. I can grant you that all day long. But how the hell do you know it if we can't falsify it?
Correct.
Well, and Otangelo, let's be clear. The three people on this panel started with the presupposition that there was a God.
Yep. Yeah.
We started with the belief that there was a God. And when we looked for him, knowing that he existed and was there, we couldn't find him when we believed he existed.
Yep. Yeah,
just the disillusioning of when you can get over yourself and what you want to be the case. and then begin to have a criteria for
wishful
evidence.
thinking doesn't help. Wishful thinking does not help us. It just doesn't. So
and the idea that I have an explanation of thing X and therefore I'm right because you don't have an explanation is just a horrible cognitive bias people have.
Very bad to do that. Yes.
I can tell you your car has a flat tire, even though I don't have a tire to replace the flat tire.
Yeah, correct. Like it's just acknowledging that we're ignorant of a great many things, and once you accept that and get used to it, it makes life a lot better. And God is one of those things we're just straight up ignorant about.
And there's the pessimistic induction, right? We have a history of like many explanations about things in the past that were attributed to God, and we've investigated many of those things that were attributed to God. And in every single case, when we have found a useful explanation, it hasn't involved God. In all the cases so far investigated.
Yeah. I'll go a step further and say when we read the biblical translation of God spoke and it happened, right? If we go back to that Genesis thing and says that God spoke and then the universe or the world, however you want to cash it out, was created. What was the physical interaction? How did the word speaking make the universe happen? And even if we knew how that interaction happened, would be more beneficial than the statement that God spoke. Believing the statement God spoke is not as beneficial as understanding the next mechanical interaction.
Like how did that work? Like how does that work?
Right.
Is the question. Like,
Ed, did you ever preach from John 1:1?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the beginning was the bird, and the bird was the word, and the bird was God, and the bird was with God.
Yeah, that was you don't really I was a Bible quizzer during John, the cycle we had in the assemblies. So that book I know very, very well. But yes, it was, I know too much now about the actual origins of the Bible and things to think it's in any way divine book. Like there's just no way it is. Like what is the mechanism for making the Bible a divine book? Like, how does that work? How do we, how did God speak to people to make sure, like, as far as I could tell, they just wrote stuff down and they used their imagination or what they thought, their own theology about what they thought God was like, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe some historical events are attached, but you got to give me a mechanism to tell me that I need to follow this book now. And nobody's really done that. It's just like...
I feel like you read David Friedrich Strauss, and he said we should treat it just like we do the Persians and the Babylonians and the Greeks writing.
Yeah, because, one of the people mentioned Genesis 1, and I'm like, Genesis 1 is written in 600 BC, maybe, and it's based on some sort of tradition they had floating around. Why should I believe that any more than Odin creates the universe out of a frost giant? Why should I believe that more? Why should I believe that more than that? It is so clear that everything is just so human. And once you get that, I can't unsee it. So somebody's for me, you got to show me how how the mechanism works where God speaks to the writers of scripture, and that makes that book different than any other one. And so it's you got to do that. And so far, nobody. So, but yeah, I don't know. I look at all these arguments for God, and it's just no, it doesn't work for me anymore. They're just too easy now.
Sorry about that, y'all. I actually haven't seen my daughter in almost a week. She's been staying with some family members, and she just poked her head in the house. She didn't know I was doing a live stream or anything. So
my son was at thing this week, so I haven't seen him in a week too. So I get to see him tonight. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
Good. It's good stuff. But yeah, like I'm still waiting for somebody to prove inspiration to me. So
yeah,
like how that works.
Well, don't you know they breathed in the Holy Spirit, Ed?
Yeah.
I've made that argument.
Jesus blew it at them and they breathed it in.
See, I think that's why I know that I get such confusion from theists because I've already made your argument. Like I used to do this. Like,
yeah,
I know where you're going, and they go,
yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you what I have found most interesting since I left. Because whenever I was in church, I was in Pentecostal church, and the Bible is the only true book to read. It's the only real canon. Reading all these other early church fathers and all, they're not a thing you need to read. But since I've left it, I started reading it and getting an idea of like how the early church followers, how they believed. And what's most interesting to me is we now have this idea about biblical inerrancy that I think is super young. I think it's very young.
Yeah. We got it from the Mormons.
Yeah.
The Mormons said the Book of Mormon is the truest book ever written, and Christians are like, fuck that.
Right.
Reaction. It's a reaction to the whole Mormonism.
The oldest position that I can find in it of this biblical inerrancy ideal is A.A. Hobbes, and I think it's 1880. He wrote it in a paper in Princeton, and then we had this guy, Benjamin Warfield, that wrote on it a little after that suggested it. But the church never really picked it up. They never ran with it. They didn't wind up running this until the Chicago Convention. So during that 1979 Chicago Convention, they had a statement of biblical inerrancy where after that statement came out, and I dare you find inside of the Baptist church or inside of these other Protestant religions, like their articles of faith, that they made the statement of inerrancy before that Chicago Convention. You can read them now in their statements of faith, like for the Baptist church, that they believe that the original autographs are inerrant. But before the 1979 convention, no church was claiming that. I can't find no one ever claimed that. And what's even weirder,
that same study. So I did that same study and realized that that's not a very old doctrine.
It's not an old doctrine.
And it's a funded doctrine. It got pushed heavily in the early 20th century by people with a lot of money who wanted this to become the standard belief.
Yeah.
But it's weird now. We engage in apologetics all the time that is like, no, the Bible is inerrant. And it was a big part of my falling away because I held this rigid kind of, no, there's no mistakes, there's no errors. And then I begin to see them and I'm like, whoa, no, there's 100%, there's a problem here. But now looking back, like that wasn't even the early church position, that there was no mistakes or no errors.
Yeah, there's like, I studied at least 6 different views of how the Bible was inspired, and that one is late. It is very late development. So there are other ones like illumination theory, where the Bible just illumines your spiritual understanding by reading it. Yeah. There's others, like Catholics have their own kind of view about the church being connected to that. There's dynamic inspiration, where by reading it, you engage the God part of yourself by reading it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's
Tertullian did a little of that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. And the one where the Bible's completely inerrant inspiration, that's very late. And of course, my denomination picked it up because they were formed during the 1910s. So they picked that up because it was a popular view at the time. So, and they put it in there, 16 fundamental truths. Number 1, Bible's an inerrant word of God. So, and it was a new thing. It was a new thing.
My take on my latest series of Substack posts is that not only is it a problem to say the Bible is inerrant, which is a huge problem, but that even to say the Bible is allegorically true or plenary inspired is still a huge problem. And I take that on with the book of Job, where there is no possible reading of the book of Job that is like satisfyingly like, oh, okay, I get that now. That makes sense. No, it's just a terrible book across the board, no matter how you view it.
Yeah, it's an awful book. There's no justice in Job. There's no resolution in Job, really. Like it's
bad. So let me tell you what something that I found interesting in Job that I also
wait. Before you get started, I got to give you the title of the post: "The Wizard of Oz."
The Wizard of Oz. Okay, that's on your Substack.
Yes, it is my most recent Substack post.
Okay.
Yes, shameless plug. Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's all right. I think actually in this video, y'all see a link in the video description. You'll see Ed and Kurt's channels. So check them out. Yeah. But so Job is an interesting one that I very recently ran into with with a Muslim individual that he was talking about a text in the Quran that mentions the storehouses of snow. And I was like, really? That comes from Job? And he's like, no, that's and he gives me this text from the Quran. And I'm like, no, it comes from Job. It's even older than what you think it is. And then he reads it and he's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that was there. But here's the thing about the snow in the storehouses. I think just like we argue with apologists now about like designs or emergent designs that appear emergent, I think early followers of religions didn't understand when they saw a snowflake that it looked like it had such a complexity that they thought something has to be designing it, right? They didn't understand that pressures or different things can bring about what looks like emergent design. So they saw the snowflake and they thought it has to be magically created because it's so asymmetric and so forth. And that's why they had this ideal that there was this storehouse in heaven that is where snow came from. Yeah, it's in Job.
I could see how they would do that. Like if it's
absolutely. It's inferring design where there's actually a natural process that explains the apparent design.
Yeah. Yeah, but now Christians will write it off to, well, it was hyperbole no, I don't think it was. I think they didn't have a way to understand what it looks like a apparent design. So they saw it and said, well, angels or something's designing this. Like it has to be. Yeah. And that's why they had this ideal of storehouses in heaven that kept the snow.
Yeah, anyway. So I could see that.
Yep.
They're writing from within the Babylonian cosmos where there's layers of heaven that are above the earth.
Sure.
And when things rain down, they're raining from these layers of heaven.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting one. But as I have been reading on the subject specifically of this contradictions thing, whether they believe there were any contradictions, I love that the Chicago Convention, and so did A.A. Hobbes' terminology, said the original autographs. So now modern Christians will argue for a specific book like the KJV or something else they might argue that it's without error, but the original one was that the position from Article 10 of the Chicago Convention said that the original autographs were inerrant. But there is actually, to the best of my knowledge, not a single statement in any early church fathers that mentions an original text.
No, they don't.
Period.
They will also, with the same breath, say that because of textual criticism, we have a very accurate idea what the original autographs are. So it's like the original autographs are the only ones that are inerrant, but we actually kind of know what they were. So
right.
It's like it's like because they're trying to shore up the doctrine, and it's like, you're not doing a very good job. Like
but the case to be made is Irenaeus, what's the Antioch one? All of our early church fathers, all of our early writers that have written on the subject. We'll even bring in what's the one we were just talking about earlier, Clement. Like no one mentions ever seeing an original of any of the books that are now in the Bible. Like no one ever mentioned it, to the best of my knowledge.
Our earliest textual layer has no knowledge of Paul writing letters, just to be clear.
Yep. True story.
But Irenaeus uses terminologies like as it was passed down to us, right? As we have received it. You see this from Eusebius really late in the game. Eusebius is like 300, and Eusebius Eusebius doesn't claim to have ever seen an original. You'd think if anybody was going to make the claim that Eusebius is making the record of early church, right? And he's making a defense of the formation of the early church, and he never claimed to have ever seen an original. So the idea that their original statement about inerrancy is that the originals didn't have any errors, and no one has ever claimed on paper to have seen a single original is insane to me.
But you've got the second century gauntlet problem as well, right? Tertullian is saying that Marcion was the mus ponticus, the mouse who's eating all these texts within the text. And guess what the Marcionites and the Valentinians are saying at the exact same time? They're saying all these people like Origen and Tertullian are putting stuff in that wasn't there before.
Yes.
And can we see evidence that they did that? Yes, we can. We can see evidence of both, right? We see evidence of people taking things out and people putting things back in. So even if there was an original, like how many Christians don't follow the long ending of Mark? Most Christian Bibles still print the long ending of Mark.
Most do.
Most still print the pericopai adulteri.
Yeah, it's like there's so many things wrong. It's almost like the early church didn't treat those texts with the same reverence that they're given in the 21st century. It's almost like it's almost like
use them as they had their own to prove a point.
Yes, exactly. Like it's almost like they didn't care about whether they were inerrant or inspired or any of that. They were just writings from other people, and they treated them as such.
Well, I don't know if you guys are familiar with James W. Barker. He has a new book out about writing and rewriting the Gospels. But I haven't finished it. I have it, but I haven't gotten into it.
Probably.
But just the first chapter and stuff you can read on Amazon for free is so good. He's so good. I saw an interview with him where he's talking about how, they would write it out on a wax stylus and then they would make corrections or whatever, and then they would transfer it over to parchment. And that's very similar to how people work in a word processor even to this day. That's how people write shit. And they have a book in front of them just like they do now, and they try to write it in a different way or do something new. And there's all sorts of evidence of this thing happening to the Gospels.
Yeah. Well, the scholarship calls it interpolation. Like and what's weird, crazy to me is when you see the Trinitarian interpolation, the Johannine comma is, I think it's the best example ever of they read this and they say, well, what it meant was, and then they literally just add to it. Well, I'm going to give some explanation of what it was talking about. It was talking about the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, in heaven. And obviously that is a Trinitarian interpolation that has just pushed into the text. And that has happened many times in small and subtle ways. That has constantly happened on rewrites. And to some degree, I don't know how much you've read of Jerome, Kurt, but I think Jerome points it out some.
Jerome is very clear. He doesn't view either the Hebrew scriptures or the New Testament as inerrant or the inspired word of a deity.
That was one of the great problems I had. I read the Church Fathers when I was in seminary, and I'm like, they don't really treat the books of the New Testament with any kind of reverence. There's nothing there that's treating them like a reverent item. There just
the story is what's important.
The story is
Augustine is amazing on this. Augustine's mom was Christian. He's literally growing up with a mom who's Christian, but he couldn't have cared less about the Christian books at all when he was young. Apparently had no exposure to them. It's only after he read the books of Plato and then read the Christian books, he's like, oh, if I'd read them the other sequence, I would have thought the Christian books were a bunch of nutballness. But because I read Plato first, then I could see what the Christian books were talking about. And that's why people should be proper interpretation before they're Christians.
If you get the proper interpretation, you can read the Bible correctly. That's how that works. I think the most hilarious thing I ever did when I was in Bible college is take hermeneutics, where they tell you don't read into the text and then proceed to teach you how to do exactly that without looking like you're reading into the text.
But the Bible's for no private interpretation.
You got to get the meaning out of it. And I'm like, how do I? Never mind. Like now, it's just funny to me because now it's like everybody reads in there what they want to be in there. Like it's I dealt with that as a pastor so many times. People come to me with their biblical interpretations, and I'm like, okay, that's not orthodox, but I can't say you're wrong.
So if y'all don't watch Dan McClellan, he dropped a video today where he was talking about he was addressing somebody that said Jesus is all over the Old Testament, right? He's the guy saying you can't see Jesus in the Old Testament. That's ridiculous. And Dan's going into detail of how we wind up reading something that we want into the text, and the guy is giving explanations like everything he's seeing Jesus everywhere. Like Jesus is he's in the symbology of everything, like the rocks, everything. It's all Jesus.
He doesn't mention the rock in the desert was Christ.
Yes.
Paul is very clear about Jesus being in the Hebrew scriptures. And he says Jesus was a rock in the desert.
He was the rock in the desert.
So like that doesn't that solve it, Robert? It's like neither Dan nor this guy want to bring this up.
Right. No. It's something that Dan to some degree mentions, that when the writers obviously of the New Testament, especially people like Paul, was heavily influenced by their Jewish background. Obviously, everything that they've already read in the literature, they're making associations in their time with, you see, now they're making correspondence in their time, even to the degree that like Matthew is using terminologies so that it may be fulfilled, as was written in the prophecy. So he's making. But you understand actions.
That's like Dan makes the point, and that's a total giveaway. I can write a book about anything being a prophecy fulfilled if I can read the book first.
Correct. This is the point that a lot of people don't get. Like, it's like if you read the book first, you can make any point you want. Like, you can do it. It's just it's so much.
All I need after I've read the first book is a pen.
Yep, correct.
Very short, maybe some paper, Kurt. Be fair.
You can write it on the back of your head.
I could scratch it into the dirt if I had to with a stick.
It's like Jesus.
Well, we are coming to the top of the hour, and I'm fixing to be wrapping up here very shortly. I thank y'all for coming on. We're doing these open panel ones. This last Sunday, my wife was in the hospital, if y'all didn't know it, so I was out with her. And unfortunately, we canceled Miss Detroit Atheist Queen. We're rescheduling her. She's fixing to be on for the 16th, August the 16th. Kurt, we got to get you somewhere in there. Are you interested in August the 9th? You wanted to talk on a particular subject?
May not work, but it might work. Let me figure.
I'll get with you. We'll correspond by email. Okay. We'll correspond by email. But generally, I did move this one to this date because Detroit Atheist Queen, she was fixing to be out of town for the Ark Encounter, which the Ark Encounter was going on today. I don't know if y'all seen any videos on it, but we had a few live streams coming in from the Ark protest. But that was going on today. That's why we wound up moving the open chat to the second Sunday, which is today. But we'll be back on schedule next month for the regular. And these are some of the folks. So next Sunday, we got Ember from Better Than Ember is fixing to be on. And then we're going to have Hizzle on. I put Kurt for the 9th. That's tentatively. Yeah. I put him on there. It might not be. I had to talk to Kurt on that subject, but we'll see how that goes. But anything y'all want to say? What y'all got going on? Kurt, you're doing the Substack?
Yep. Just trying to get 2 or 3 a week. They take a while to craft.
Yes, I see. There's that last one that you wrote there. I started to read a little bit of it. It is fairly lengthy and fairly well thought out. And
the one about Christianity being a Greek religion? Yes,
that's the one that I looked at last.
One of the big clues is it's written in Greek.
It's a pretty big clue. So
that took a long time to research, as you can guess.
Yes. And Ed is from the Rabid Atheist. I think, Ed, you've been doing some video reviews, Bible timelining.
I do a lot of different things because I'm on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, live streaming. Do a video every now and then.
On my slow work days, I get a chance to pop into Ed's stream, but unfortunately, the timing isn't always available every day.
It's a time for me to do it. So I do that just to answer some of the questions in chat. I'm a former pastor, became an atheist. I was a pastor for like 20 years, a Christian for like 40. I also have degrees in Bible and theology, a master's degree in theological studies. So I've done that. So I'm coming at it from a pastoral and scholarly perspective most days. So I have a lot of fun. So
he's the Phantom's adding those years together. So you're 85, he's saying?
Yes. Well, they overlap a little bit.
Yeah, obviously.
A little bit. But yeah, like I've spent a lot of time in the ministry and studying the Bible. So yes, for decades.
Yes. Excellent. Well, I thank y'all both from having on here. I think we'll just talk it out with everyone on here. I thank y'all for watching. As always, my daughter, unfortunately, though, she's wanting to go walk with me, and I haven't seen her in about a week, and I'm fixing to be wrapping it up to go walk with my daughter.
You have yourself a great afternoon.
All right, appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Everybody.
Yeah, you too.
Later. Well.